Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and thank you all again. Ms. Ramirez, I think I want to start with you for a minute. You said in your testimony, never has the need for legislation been greater. And so taking that statement, it could mean that the companies who suffered the breaches did not use reasonable measures to protect consumer data. So if that is your statement, then is the FTC involved in the forensic investigation regarding the Target, Neiman Marcus, Adobe, the hotel chains, all of these breaches?
I'm afraid that I can't discuss any particular companies or discuss whether the FTC is involved in any particular investigations, but let me explain what I meant by that statement. I meant it as a general statement reflecting what we are seeing in the marketplace, and that is that companies continue to make very basic mistakes when it comes to data security. And our role at the FTC is to protect consumers and ensure that companies take reasonable and appropriate measures to protect consumer information.
Okay, then let me stop you right there. So you're saying that not due to this group, but because of general, so you're basically reworking your testimony with me on this. It's not that these specific breaches show that there has never been a greater need. So you may want to submit a little bit of clarification there.
I can do so right now if you wish. I'm not
well, no, I want to move on. I've got 3 minutes and 14 seconds and about 5 pages of questions. So submit it. I also would like for you to talk about or to submit to us what is the reasonable standard. You have referenced this several different times, but I have not seen a reasonableness standard in writing. So what are you referencing?
We take a process-based approach to this question. Technology is changing very rapidly. The threats that companies face are also evolving very rapidly. So we think the appropriate way to proceed in this situation is to focus on whether companies are looking very closely at the threats to which their businesses are exposed and whether they're setting reasonable programs, security programs, putting those in place.
Okay, why don't we...
If I may, it's a very fact-specific inquiry. And
okay,
I think that a reasonableness standard
I can appreciate that, but I think that to use that term repeatedly, what we need to know is what your definition of reasonableness would be. Mr. Zevlin, let me come to you. You know, we hear the chairman say, well, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. How quickly do the cyber criminals' methods evolve? You've looked at this for a long time. So, and you send out updates, you know, daily, weekly, monthly. So how quickly is the evolution of this process?
Congresswoman, the evolution is incredibly fast, and we're learning with each incident the complexity. So they're moving very quickly, they're very sophisticated, and we are in a chase to keep up with them.
Okay. Ms. Ramirez, back to you. Another thing, you testified that in the number of the 50 data security cases settled by the FTC, the companies simply, and I'm quoting you, failed to employ available cost-effective security measures to minimize or to reduce the data risk. So I want you to give us some examples of the kind of measures that the companies failed to use, because you hear from Mr. Zevlin how quickly this evolution is taking place and the need for flexibility and nimbleness. And then we hear you saying, but you've got to have a standard and you've got to do this. And we have taken these efforts in the 50 cases we have settled. So for those of us that are looking at what legislation would look like, we have to realize that it's got to be nimble. You're saying you want something, but then you're not giving us specifics or examples of what you think people have failed to do. So I hope you're understanding we've got a little bit of a gap here. Go ahead.
So let me just say that I think the approach that the FTC recommends for legislation is one of reasonableness. We think that that's an appropriately flexible standard that will allow for nimble action. And to give you an example, as I mentioned, in our experience, companies continue to make very simple mistakes when it comes to data security. We also have data that corroborates that, and that includes the Verizon data breach report that Mr. Noonan referenced in his opening remarks. So just to give you a few examples, this can span low-tech and high-tech mistakes, but they could include the failure to use strong passwords, the failure to encrypt personal information, the failure to update security patches. So it's these very basic mistakes that we encounter frequently.
So it is consumer and not company failures.
No, these would be, no, I'm referring to company failures.
You're referring to company failures. Okay, thank you. I yield back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you all for your patience this morning. I cannot tell you how so many of our constituents have mentioned their frustration with the data breaches and their desire to get some clarity and some certainty in this process. And as you've heard me mention in the earlier questioning and opening statement, Mr. Welch, Ms. Schakowsky, and I are doing a data security and privacy working group to make certain that what we do, when we do something on the issue, that we do it in the appropriate manner, and that we allow the flexibility and the nimbleness that is going to be needed. And Mr. Russo, you spoke well to the need for that. Mr. Kingston, if I could come to you, and going back to your testimony, with the malware that was there in your breach, have any of the law enforcement agencies that are working with you on this, have they ever seen this type malware before, and what is the origin of that malware?
Congressman, we've been working very closely with law enforcement, specifically with the Secret Service, and what they've been able to share with us so far is that the malware is very, very, very sophisticated. As I said earlier in my testimony, had a 0 detection rate by antivirus software, and it's not something that they've seen before. It was very specifically designed for an attack on our systems.
Okay, so it was designed specifically for an attack. And do you know the origin yet?
They have not shared that with us. I'm not sure.
They
if
have
that's
not.
known.
Okay. Mr. Russo, when you look at this, and here is something designed specifically to attack and to take down their financial infrastructure, if you will, then what is your guidance to us as we seek to look at that data share, which is important, that information share, which is important? Mr. Zelvin spoke to that in the previous panel. What is your instruction to us? Because we know that the different agencies send out threats and updates on a regular basis, and you have something that is unique. So what is your instruction to us? And then the second question I have for you in the interest of time is, what are the unique identifiers that you are seeing creep up in some of this malware?
So first of all, the council is a wonderful forum in which to share information. Companies give us feedback all the time as to what's going on. The forensic investigators tell us about trends that they're seeing, which all gets factored into creating these standards and making sure that they're not only good for today, but good for what we see coming in the future. So it's been our experience that the standards are very, very solid. We have a lot of history around this. I think we've heard 2 or 3 times, as I can recall during the hearings this morning, that what we saw and what we continue to see are basic threats that are being exploited. Very basic threats. You've heard me say, you've heard Mr. Smith say about passwords being used, and so on. SQL injection is another one, lest I get technical here. Very, very basic things. Within the standards now, there are a myriad of ways to prevent this from happening and to prevent malware as sophisticated as it may be, from getting into the system. So at this point, I don't have enough information in terms of what actually happened, but I can tell you up until now, everything that we've seen in terms of these major breaches over the last 7 years has been exactly what the panel before us indicated. Very, very basic exploits that easily could have been defeated. So until we actually have some solid information as opposed to what we're reading in the newspapers, we really can't make a determination as to what happened and if the standards need to be updated.
I hope you will come back to us. When you look at standards and compliance, and we know even going back to the TJ Maxx breach, they were compliant, they just weren't secure. And there is a difference there. Mr. Mulligan, at Target, how much have you all invested in secure networks?
Over the past several years, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars. Part of that has been in technology, segmentation, malware detection, intrusion detection and prevention, data loss prevention. Part of that has been in teams. We have over 300 team members responsible for information security. Part of that is an assessment. PCI is one assessment that we do, certainly as part of the payment card industry, but we are constantly assessing ourselves, having other third parties come in and do penetration testing, benchmarking us against others and benchmarking us against best in class. And when we train 370,000 team members annually on the importance of information security, so we have a holistic view and we have invested significantly.
Okay, Mr. Kingston, how much has Neiman spent on security?
So we've spent tens of millions of dollars on very specific security measures, and as Mr. Mulligan said, it's really a combination of technology as well as people and process. I think one of the things that we do at Neiman Marcus is really important that I think the subcommittee should think about is the fact that we do annual security awareness training for all Neiman Marcus associates that access systems, and I think awareness is a big part of strong defense.
Yes. Well, my time has expired. I will yield back. Mr. Mulligan, I'm going to submit a question to you for a written answer on the